Authoring in XR. I will be presenting a little bit on the substrate, on active reading for authoring, and the components of authoring a volume. The aim is to have a highly interactive volume when authoring and reading, viewable in many ways, long form, spatial hypertext, nodes, etc., and possible to immerse oneself in or read in context. The volume should also be, to some degree, accessible in 2D, and it should be possible to be cited, otherwise it is not an academic document. We therefore ask, how should the XR volume you're authoring appear? How should the environment appear? How should contextual information appear? And how should you be able to interact with it all? We use the term volume rather than document to give a sense of the volume of space, and maybe the term document may seem a little old-fashioned. What we're trying to do here is to ask increasingly useful questions, not come up with anything definitive, even though we're building experiments to experience what these things can be. For context, this weekend saw the anniversary of the Macintosh, beautiful 9-inch screen. Compare that with an average viewing screen today of 4K. This is the real size difference, and we're now coming up towards 8K for a lot of content as well, which dwarfs everything. But of course, XR takes over your entire field of vision, so it explodes into space. This substrate has no frame, so therefore I urge you to ignore the current limitations of headset, the weight, the cost, battery life, processing. It won't take long until we'll have something that we really don't notice we're wearing, and it will have an entire visual field for us to work on. This substrate has no frame. We've been used to working with substrates that have frames, such as documents, pictures, video, pretty much forever. It's really handy when designing interfaces because you can stick controls at the top of the screen, on the side, on the bottom, or whatever. You have a frame. To say it again, this substrate has no frame, which is a great creative challenge. This goes all the way back, of course, to cuneiform. So we should probably look at other fields such as architecture, music, and sculpture to inform how we can express our thoughts in richer medium. Maybe sculpture is the best place initially to look. Now, please note that linearity comes from printing, not from text. Just look at Newton's notebooks. He wrote in the margins, wrote of different sizes all over the place. And of course, he had the ability to do knowledge mapping or similar anywhere he wanted to, not constrained by whether he was in a word processor, an outliner, the web, and so on. Hopefully, we can keep this flexibility when we move into XR. So there are many aspects of authoring. We're going to ignore publishing for now. We're going to focus on thinking and writing. But first, we're going to look at active reading. So active reading starts with a source document that is either JSON brought in or PDF converted. Really, really important to say that in the same way we urge you to ignore the limitations of the headset, we should also ignore current document limitations. This is for the future. We're starting with JSON, which is a very simple data format, so we can have the rich flexibility of working with modern and future documents. While doing active reading, you interact with the document. You can do highlighting, commenting, notation. You can extract things. This is easier in XR than other places where you just literally pull things up, put it in space where you need it. And then, of course, you can also write an annotated bibliography, meaning you take information from different sources, put it on the new document with citation from where it came, and when you are ready, you can put it into your manuscript, your new document. That then is exported to JSON to go back into the XR universe, or converted to PDF with Visual Meta JSON as a backup. So the document you made becomes the background for someone else. The document you make should have rich ways to view, or view specs, as we call it, based on Doug Engelbart's language, to view the document in many, many ways. And that's what we should be discussing today. So that was active reading. Active reading becoming a source for others. Of course, the source when you are authoring also includes your own documents, knowledge map, 3D objects, and so on. These things can be filtered to determine what should be displayed in your space. That's an interesting question of when different filters and what are relevant. they can be presented in many ways, from lists to maps to geographic maps, individual papers, books, libraries, all kinds of things. These are the things we really need to try to get a huge list of. So I urge you to help us with that in the Google Doc. And this happens not in nothing. It happens in an environment that can be sparse or richly detailed. It can be based on the real world. It could be based purely on imagination, and so on. The actions we can look at for this is how to do the reading, the finding, how we can view things in context, cite and connect, copy, embed. The action for the environment is changing views, layout, summoning and hiding different aspects, and so on. So for the volume that we are talking about creating, one thing we can do is look at the different aspects of it. I've done this not because it is completely correct, but to help spark a little bit of dialogue. So on top here we have the structure, which is basically the text as body, headings, mappings, and then semantic encoding, which can include something as simple as bolding, making a highlight, heading, all of that stuff. Notes, endnote, footnote, glossary, embedding of different media, how you're doing connections, and framing. So coming to a close here, we can imagine ourselves standing in a space with all these different sources visualized. They can be literal globes, document notes, 3D, all these good things. And then we look at the interaction elements. We can even change clothing. Let's say different glasses give us different views. Maybe different apparel can change how we touch, let's say, our left shoulder, because that means something maybe. Tools, maybe a pen or a microphone or a palette, of course a keyboard. Similarly, we can look at how we can touch our hands to have a hand menu that we worked on last year. Maybe an arm menu, and we mustn't forget the action of the eyes looking around and the ears for audio feedback. In this environment, thinking about this, we look at the volume construction. Maybe it looks traditional, maybe it's spaced out by chapter, maybe because something completely different, some kind of a knowledge map or some kind of a fuzzy visualization. Maybe it becomes based on shapes. Maybe we are inside the shape. This is where we need to think and go much further. So I thank you very much for looking at this and hope that you can join the dialogue on how you want to construct your XR volume. Thank you again.